As we advance in our ability to understand the material world, we should be cautious not to lean so heavily on materialism that we dismiss the possibility that spiritual realities may operate through means not yet understood, perhaps even within frameworks like quantum phenomenon. But how can we ever hope to understand these phenomena if we don't first understand the material before us? Welcome to Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. Ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, conspiracy theorists, interdimensional philosophers, seekers of truth, comparative mythology enthusiasts, and last, but certainly not least, all of you that desperately cling to your confirmation bias. Whether your interest is Atlantis to Zeus, cuneiform to quantum physics, we tackle it all from our quantumly entangled castle, tucked away in the ancient flood-battered Central Pangaean mountain range. We're the one-stop shop for mystery, history, and comparative mythology. We're a podcast dedicated to exploring the ancient, mysterious, and unknown with logic and reason, and where we also theorize the geometric fourth dimension exists and is the spiritual. We might have some additional trigger warnings. We're going to be talking a little bit about Freud, and he's kind of quack on some of his theories, so I will throw that out there. But aside from that, involving reproductive topics, the only other trigger warning for this episode is a logical conversation, so if applying the Socratic method on fringe topics is disturbing to you, turn off the podcast now. All right, and here we are. I unmuted you. You're good.
Oh, hello.
So, I'm working on dealing with static in the studio. Just some behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm trying to chase down the cause of like faint static in the background, and it's driving me crazy. I think I'm mostly getting there, but I'm going to have to fine-tune it over the next couple episodes, I think. So if you've noticed that, I'm sorry. And if you haven't and you're like, what the heck is he talking about? Then good. I did my job right. But okay, yeah, I really don't have anything else. So I'll kick it over to you for starting the episode here, because we're doing part 2. So if you haven't already listened to the last episode that we did on Psych and Spirit, you'll want to go listen to that, because we're doing a whole series on that. So.
Me now?
You now.
Okay. Hi, y'all. So, this whole episode is just going to be about sleep and dreams, and then slightly introducing something that'll be a surprise tool to help us later.
Yeah, those surprise tools are always nice. So we're going to talk, like you said, we're going to talk a little bit about dreams. We're going to talk about the science of it, because I think, again, like I said in the cold open there, to actually be able to understand this and relate it to the spiritual idea and the fourth dimensional idea, we have to have an understanding of what we can know. And we need to have that foundation before we look at, the more fringe ideas on things, I think, and before we start speculating, because if the more informed we are on the materialistic explanation, the more basis we have to build off of. And we're going to tie some of this into some comparative mythology analysis, actually, that we've done, and some that we haven't done, that I'm going to do near the end, after you kind of lay the groundwork for us. But we're going to talk about the science of dreams, and then we're going to go into actually talking about how this can tie into the fourth dimension, and then we'll hit your surprise tool.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's a general outline you have, but all right, what do you got?
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. And make some friends along the way.
Yeah, that's always nice. So I'm just going to start with the anatomy. This is going to be a very science-heavy episode. So I have a lot of additional sources, and I included one supplemental source. It's really cool. It's a 3D brain, and it'll help you visualize everything that I'm talking about a little bit more. So anyways, so many parts of the brain work together to control sleep, wakefulness, and dreaming. So the hypothalamus helps regulate many of the body functions. And the suprachiasmatic nucleus, also called SCN, that's inside the hypothalamus. So it helps keep track of the light and helps set the circadian rhythm. And then the brainstem includes the pons, medulla, and midbrain, and that controls whether you are awake or asleep by working with the hypothalamus to release GABA, and that's a neurotransmitter that slows brain activity and helps you fall asleep. And then during REM sleep, the brainstem also paralyzes your muscles so you don't physically act out on your dreams.
Right, and that's why, like, if you're running from a serial killer in your dreams, you're not, like, literally moving your legs, and that kind of feeds into things like sleep paralysis.
Stop. Also sleepwalking, but
Yeah,
that'll be addressed in not this episode. But
yeah, that'll be a fun topic. We need to talk about that.
Sleep talking, all that.
I apparently sleep talk sometimes in like jarbles, but I don't like say like words. I just say like mumbled nonsense most of the time, or so I'm told.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways. And then the thalamus acts as a relay station for sensory and motor information to the cerebral cortex. So it generates slow oscillations, and those are brain waves that help create the right timing and conditions for the other brain rhythms to occur. And then sleep spindles. And those are also called sigma waves. They are the brief bursts of brain activity that are linked to memory consolidation. Do you have something to say?
Not really. I'm trying to wrap my mind around all of this. It'll probably be a lot better for our listeners if they're using that visual tool that you reference.
That's just for the anatomy. So I included literally all of the sources that I used. Basically, the slow oscillations are slow, and then the sleep spindles are super fast.
Is that kind of like the low and high frequency kind of things that they talk about with the brain?
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of, but like...
I know you're going to get into frequency stuff here and all that. This isn't the whole episode. Don't worry, listeners.
No,
this is just
not.
so you have like a general understanding of like different regions of the brain.
Yeah, I'm giving you foundational, and then we'll keep getting like... It's a work in progress. We'll get there.
Brain surgery and neuroscience in 5 minutes here. I'm using some mysteries in the Mythical Matrix.
Heck yeah. When you're done with this, you should have an MD.
Yeah. You'll be able to go in and take the place of a brain surgeon. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
That's illegal.
That's a crime. Don't do drugs. Stay in school. Stay in the quad squad.
Yeah, please. Don't go to jail. All right. So yeah, we talked about slow oscillation, sleep spindle. Okay. The pineal gland receives messages from the SCN in the hypothalamus. That releases melatonin, the hormone that makes you sleepy, to help sync with your natural circadian rhythm. And then lastly, the amygdala is in charge of emotions like fear and excitement. And during REM sleep, the amygdala becomes highly active, which may be why dreams often have intense emotional content.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. No, that's good to know. I mean, this is probably going to be like drinking from a fire hose for our listeners, but that's all right. This is just kind of a general.
It's a lot to take in.
It's a general familiarization. Don't worry. This isn't like, again, we'll dive into other stuff and we'll bounce back to this and connect it a little bit.
There's no test.
Yeah, there's no test. But yeah, no, I mean, like,
I had to test on this, but there's no test for you guys.
I mean, like, I learned about like the amygdala doing a lot of like trauma study and everything because that's where like that's kind of like the starting point more or less from PTSD. Like, from my recollection, this was like probably 6, 7, 8 years ago I studied all this stuff, but that plays a key component in communication. I think communication as well of the right and left brain hemispheres. I could be mistaken on that, but so you're saying these things and it's ringing bells for me. But even me that studied psychology, it's like, yeah, okay, this is a lot of information to process all at once, but just baseline knowledge that you have it as the listener.
Yep. Okay. So now that we have that down, like all of the anatomy, we're going to get into the brain waves. It's a lot.
All right.
It's a lot to take in. I tried to make it as painless and simple as possible because even I was starting to get frustrated with it. Okay. Before I get into this, the numbers for hertz might be wrong because every source that I had something slightly different. Like it might be off by like 1 or 2, but it's the general ballpark.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So Brain waves are the patterns of electrical activity in the brain, and they're created by neurons communicating with each other using electrical impulses. So they are measured using an EEG and are categorized by their frequency, so how fast they occur, and then measured in hertz or cycles per second.
So basically, it's kind of like electrical current, like the pulsing of the neurons.
Yes.
Okay. And then that's they measure that in like terms of basically like just the amount of electricity that's flowing through the
cycles per second.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Straightforward enough.
So the way that I'm going to go through this is highest hertz to lowest hertz.
And your brain's going to hurt when we're done.
Yeah.
Right. I had to throw that in there. Sorry.
That was funny.
Yeah.
I like that one. All right. So the first one is gamma. Gamma waves are the fastest brain waves. They measure above 30. So anything 31 and up. So they are found throughout the entire brain, suggesting that they are actually important for connecting brain regions.
So maybe this plays, and this is just me purely hypothesizing here. I don't really have any like research or anything in front of me, but maybe this plays a role in almost like helping sync up those quantumly entangled states as well as it's tied to maybe the gamma. Oh, is that something you saw in your research? Because I saw you nodding.
No, but I was kind of thinking the same thing.
Okay.
Where it does play some role. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that because I'm saving that for the other episode too.
Okay. Sorry, I'm derailing you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I like hearing your thoughts. Anyways, so the waves are involved in conscious perception, learning, and integrating information across the brain. So gamma is basically a conductor that syncs different parts of the brain to work together in harmony.
Okay, that makes sense. That's kind of like the connecting conduit for all the different areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they're often linked with peak mental performance, consciousness, and spiritual awareness.
Why spiritual awareness?
So there was actually a study done. I don't even have this on my notes. I'm going to try to remember as much as I can. But there was a study done where Buddhist monks, they meditate a lot, and they actually had more gamma waves than others who didn't meditate as much. So there's like some connection to, a spiritual aspect.
Okay. So kind of like awareness or like kind of like a calm, like meditative state almost.
Almost.
This sounds familiar. I wonder if Wim Hof talked about this in his book because this sounds familiar in connection to the Wim Hof method. But
I mean, that I don't know because I haven't read the book, but
I only read part of it. I need to finish that. I have like 50 books started that I just like need to finish. I have one I need to finish tomorrow for our guest that's coming on for next week's episode.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But that's all I had for gamma. One thing that I will say about gamma actually is that it is such a broad category for the brainwaves because it's anything 31 and up. Mm-hmm. So
there's a lot that falls into that basically.
Yeah, there's subcategories with it like fast, super fast, ultra fast, that sort of thing. Okay. I know I'm paraphrasing that, but it's basically what it is. So they have the subcategories, and they have different associations with those, but I didn't look into that as much. I'm just kind of giving the basics.
Yeah, you're good. Anything else on gamma?
No.
Okay. What's next?
Beta. So beta waves are actually about 13 to 30 hertz, and they are the most commonly seen rhythm in healthy individuals who are awake, alert, and mentally engaged with active thinking. They are strongest in the frontal and central regions of the brain, but the amplitude decreases as you move toward the back of the brain. Okay,
so connected to the prefrontal cortex a bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting then.
And then the central region up at the top of the head. But
right, so that would kind of correlate a little bit more to like impulse control almost and everything a bit, and then just general like functioning.
Cognitive thinking, yeah.
Yeah, so we got gamma, which kind of connects everything together, and then you have beta, which is kind of maybe more the seat of consciousness almost. Potentially, like the
Say that again?
you have gamma, which kind of connects everything together, and then you have beta, which is maybe more like the frequency of consciousness.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, I'll get into alpha here next, but beta and alpha are both with consciousness, like awareness, that sort of thing. It's just different levels.
Okay.
So actually, my next, I think I had a sentence here. Yeah. So that one is healthy individuals who are awake and alert, mentally engaged. So alpha is slightly different. So alpha waves measure between 8 and 12 hertz, and then the amplitude of these waves varies based on the person and the moment. They're primarily found in the back of the brain, so opposite of beta. And they are strongest during relaxation and not actively processing information. So it's like beta in the sense that when you're awake, that wave is happening, but you're not actively focused on something. You're not actively thinking about anything. It's a relaxed but awake state.
Okay, so maybe more the subconscious, like processing when you're awake.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would.
This is just me guessing. I haven't
so.
done the research you have, so I'm just kind of trying to take what you're saying and put it into a condensed format in my own words.
I would say so. So think of it this way. Like if I'm reading my book, it would most likely be the beta waves. But if I'm sitting like here and I'm just looking outside at a tree and I'm not really thinking about anything, like I'm relaxed, that's more the alpha.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So.
Are there any other brainwaves?
Yeah, there's a couple more.
Okay.
I'm still going for alpha, but we can. Do you want me to finish alpha quick and then do that?
Yeah, go ahead and finish alpha, and then we're gonna take a break.
Okay. So. Yeah, and then they're not actively processing information. So especially if the eyes are closed, but they disappear or weaken when the eyes open, or if there's mental activity present. So basically, what I just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Don't let the waves of your mind drift off. We will be back in just a moment. I gotta say, this soundtrack is a lot more fitting for brainwaves than I was expecting. It's really makes you feel like you're going on like that ethereal journey through the mind, kind of coasting the waves of the brain and how to think, I
feel like most of your soundtrack is like that.
Yeah, that's true. This one was titled
it,
Dreamer, so I look at that and I'm just like, yeah, that one.
That's funny.
That one.
That's so ironic.
Yeah. All right, we're back. So go ahead. Back over to you. You just finished up alpha brainwaves.
Yes. So next is theta. So theta waves about 4 to 7 hertz become active during drowsiness. So they are mostly prominent in the frontocentral areas of the brain. And then as drowsiness increases, theta waves move backward and gradually replace alpha waves.
So theta is more like the onset of sleep.
Yeah, it's basically the brain's way of saying, hey, you're starting to get tired. Maybe now's the time to start thinking about going to bed.
So that's the demon wave that I'm fighting whenever I drink my caffeine. I'm going to take a sip of my Focus Aid right now. I'm not sponsored by Focus Aid in any way, shape, or form, by the way.
Yeah, you just like that. You just like Focus Aid.
Yeah, it's really good. Low sugar, B vitamins, caffeine.
You really sound like you're trying to sell Focus Aid.
I need to.
Like you're trying.
I need to reach out to them and be like, hey, I can sponsor. Like, you guys could sponsor like an episode or something, and we'll advertise for you subtly and like, yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, keep going. Sorry. So theta waves. What else?
That was actually it for theta waves. So
okay.
It's just the brain's way of saying, hey, you're starting to get tired. Think about sleeping. Like,
Okay. And so this is interesting too, because then again, like, don't get lost in the terminology here. So when we're saying like these different waves, this is just different frequencies of the pulses.
Yes.
So like the certain pulses kind of give different.
It's all different frequencies. These are just categories for the frequencies. So that's why I'm saying ranges of the hertz.
Right. And no, I just think that that's just really interesting to me, that it's like it's all the same process. It's just what the oscillation is in the electric like current of the neurons is what is going on in the brain. And that to me, again, speaks more to this quantum idea and maybe a deeper element to this than we understand. Not absolutely, of course, but yeah, you said you have one more. So what do we have besides theta?
We have delta. So delta waves are about 0.5 to 4 hertz, and they are primarily in, again, the fronto-central head regions of the brain during sleep. And then these waves can have specific patterns that relate to certain regions and medical conditions. And then their presence while awake usually signals brain dysfunction. So they are primarily only found while you are sleeping.
Okay. All right. So that's cool. So we've got kind of the interconnected. I'm trying to remember all these because that is a lot. It's 5.
If you need me to remind you, I can.
I'm going to try to do it. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we've got gamma. We got gamma,
Yes.
which is kind of that interconnectedness. We have beta, which is more in the prefrontal and central. And that's more like probably more where like your immediate consciousness sits. And then you have alpha in the back, which is probably a little bit more the subconscious. And then you have theta, which comes on as an onset. I can't remember if you said a region of the brain for this one. Was it everywhere or just?
So it's in the front central, like fronto-central. And then as you get more sleepy, it moves to the back and it replaces alpha.
Okay, so it kind of like washes over as a wave to kind of let you know that, hey, it's time to start going to bed, which kind of reinforces that idea that beta might be more the seat of the consciousness. And then we have the delta, which is the actual, like, you're asleep. And the only reason it wouldn't be doing that is if there's something wrong.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the actual you are asleep, but they're only found when you are sleeping. So some of these brainwaves are, present when you are going through sleep. It's just the different stages of sleep, which we will talk about next.
All right. Sounds good. Well, easy enough. Yeah. All right. Well, I think I retained that pretty well overall.
You did. You did.
I'll take that. I'll give myself a B+.
Nah, give yourself an A.
All right.
All right. So now we're talking about stages. So once these brain structures signal the body to transition from wakefulness to rest, sleep unfolds in a series of distinct stages, each marked by a unique pattern of brain activity. So these stages, they're categorized as non-REM, and then REM sleep. REM is just rapid eye movement. I think everyone almost knows that. I don't know.
I think we mentioned that on the last episode because I was talking about trauma and stuff and how like REM sleep mirrors eye movement desensitization reprocessing, EMDR. But yeah, if you didn't know that, and if you're a new listener, welcome. REM is rapid eye movement.
Rapid eye movement. And then, so that can be identified and studied using, again, the EEG recordings to visualize the brain's electrical rhythms. And then it cycles through these stages several times each night. And then I already talked about that. Whoops. So first I'm going to talk about wakefulness. So when a person is awake, the EEG shows primarily the alpha and beta activity, like I said. And then when we get to non-REM, so it's categorized into 3 different stages. So N1, N2, and N3. So N1 lasts about 1 to 5 minutes, and it accounts for about 5% of total sleep. So while the alpha waves begin to fade, beta waves can actually become stronger during this stage of sleep. And then this is why it's also called light sleep. It's why it's so easy to wake up.
Is this when your body sometimes will do that jolt thing to wake you up?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would make sense then if there's more
Yeah.
beta waves because it's kind of like that snap to make sure that you're not like falling into the void and like dying.
I don't know how true that actually. I didn't see that in this, but there is something where people are saying your body's just testing that you're not dying.
Yeah, I don't know if that's science or not.
I don't think that's true.
I've seen that, but I don't know. Who knows? Not me.
I actually don't know that either. I don't know. Listeners, Google it. Let me know.
I know
Anyways.
Cordell or Steven will probably check it out and
Yeah.
send an email or
Good
something.
old Cordell and good old Steven.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then during this stage is when the theta waves actually replace the alpha waves as well. So that's when the drowsiness comes to, and it's the start of everything.
Okay, so that's kind of the starting of that washing over
Yeah.
of the theta in prepping for the delta.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the N2 lasts about 25 minutes in the first cycle, and it makes up about half of total sleep. So here, sleep spindles, the sigma waves, the short bursts of activity, and then K complexes. Those are the big sharp waves. Those are present as well.
During N2?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, that was a lot of big words.
I know. Okay. So sleep spindles are the sigma waves that I mentioned, the brief bursts of activity.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
then-
The N1, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the K complexes are just the big sharp waves
Okay.
on an EEG. That's it.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Simplified terms.
Okay. Sweet. Thank you. Talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And then I'll say that if someone talks to me like a 5-year-old, I'm like, talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old.
You'll just keep going down.
Honestly, there are points where I wonder how am I even able to like figure out ancient Sumerian, because like there are points where I'm just like, people tell me things and I'm just like, talk to me like I'm stupid for a minute, please. Anyway.
So N3 is the deepest sleep with delta waves present. So that's where the delta is.
Okay. Makes sense.
And then this lasts about 20 to 40 minutes per cycle, but it gradually shortens as the night progresses, and you'll see why in the next step. It is very hard to wake someone from this stage, and if you do wake up, you could have the grogginess and mental fog. So if you wake up with the grogginess and mental fog, you were probably in N3.
This happened to me once when I was on a work trip. I had to get woken up and I was like an hour into sleep, maybe a little less. So this is like prime time.
Yeah.
And my buddy ran and there was like some emergency thing where we had to like go out, and he like came and was like talking to me in the doorway and like came and shook me. And I'm just like looking at him and it just sounded like he was speaking some like dead language of Celtic. Like that's the only time that's ever happened to me. But I'm just looking at him and I'm like, what?
You
and
couldn't process a single thing
and
that was happening.
And he said it again and I'm like, what?
You're like, why am I here right now?
It literally sounded. It sounded like that to me. I'm just looking at him and I'm like, what? And then like, and he wasn't screwing with me. Like there was an actual emergency like kind of thing going on, and so like
everyone at your work values sleep very much.
Yeah. So he wasn't screwing with me. Like it was something legitimate. Like he wasn't joking or anything. And then like the third time he said it, it's like, hey, we gotta get out. We gotta go outside. I'm like, oh, okay. So I go grab my stuff and ran out. So, but yeah, no. So that would be the N3 then.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. This is cool. I'm like connecting all of these like, mildly traumatic experiences I've had to all this neuroscience. I like it.
Now you know why.
Yeah. It's like, that's why. Because of all the delta waves in my brain.
Delta waves.
Because I let the theta waves take over. Sips caffeine.
Well, the theta waves take over the alpha waves. You almost had it. Yeah.
Well, they take over.
It's a step. Okay.
Yes,
so
they take over the alpha waves to prep for the delta waves that are only occurring when you're sleeping. That's what I meant.
You were like pretty much there. Yeah.
Yeah. I just kind of skipped a couple steps. But yes. Anyway, continue. Sorry. So N1, N2, N3, we got those covered.
Yes, and then REM sleep.
Okay. This is the one I actually know because I didn't get to take a neuroscience class in college.
So REM sleep is where things get a little strange and a lot more interesting. It starts about 90 minutes after falling asleep and lasts 10 minutes at first, the first cycle, but it increases up to 1 hour later in the night. So the decrease in N3 makes up for the increase in REM. That's why you see the decrease in N3 to make time for the REM.
Okay, I got you. So like REM is basically N4, but they just don't call it N4 because that's non-REM technically. So it's just REM. So it's just that final stage. And N3 kind of decreases in cycle to give space. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So is it kind of like an oscillation thing where you'll go like 1, 2, 3 to REM, and then to 3 REM, then 1, 2 REM, or is it like how does it work?
I think it's just 1, 2, 3 REM, 1, 2, 3 REM, but I think I've heard of people going back to 3. I don't know. I actually don't know that one. I'll have to look on Break or whatever.
Yeah, because then like everyone has like, because generally like a full REM cycle, at least I've heard, I don't know how true this is, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's around 4 hours or so, like to get like a full REM cycle to go through all of that into REM. So it's like, that's like generally the rule, but for different people it can vary. So it can be a little bit more, a little bit less.
It can vary, yeah.
You have like the sleepers elite that can legit just no, seriously, it's a legit term that they can function on like 4 hours of sleep. Like
I've met people like that.
I also met someone like that, and I was just like, dude, you're lucky.
That could be a sign of something bad happening with his brainwaves, though. So yeah. I don't think he's lucky.
I mean, some people are born that way, though.
I didn't finish my REM sleep.
Oh, okay, well, finish REM sleep, and then we gotta take a break.
Okay, so during REM, your brain becomes highly active with fast and jagged waves, almost as if you were awake, but the body remains paralyzed, except for the eyes, diaphragm, and obviously like your internal organs.
Right, because those are kind of regulated
It's
differently.
like your muscles are paralyzed, I'll say that.
Yeah. Okay.
The eyes dart back and forth, heart rate and breathing becomes irregular, and then REM is the stage most commonly associated with vivid dreaming. And then dreams can occur in other stages, but they are less common and intense in NREM stages.
This is going to be really interesting when we talk about what we got to talk about. I'm going to tie this into some fun stuff that I've talked about. I think it was episode 22, Abnormal, Paranormal. Mm-hmm. Is that it for him?
Yeah.
All right. We'll be right back. And we've returned here in Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. Instead of musing on the Mythical Matrix, we're musing on dreams and what they might mean and how they work. Well, we haven't gotten to the what they might mean part yet, but...
We will.
We will. We will get there. It is inevitable. Just like confirmation bias. Because there's a lot of people out there with confirmation bias. What the heck just happened? I saw my screen spaz out on my mixer. Just like glitched for a split second. That gave me like a mild heart attack. Okay. That's fun. But no, so you're talking about this. I didn't realize this is when you were going to have me like mention like my like
your experience.
I don't even want to call it a dream because I feel like it wasn't. Some people may disagree with that. That's fine.
It all depends on how you interpret it, basically. Is whether you define it as a dream, a vision, a spiritual experience, whatever.
Your interpretation of my story is open to however you want to interpret it, but it's my story, and so I'm going to call it a vision because I didn't really believe it for a while and didn't give it credit. Yeah. But I have come around to that. So if you don't want to believe it, you think I'm lying, that's fine. I don't care. It's my story. But yeah. So we've talked about this in episode 22, I think, Abnormal, Paranormal. But where I was at Liberty in college, and there was one point where it was like a Sunday, and I just laid down on my bed, and I was like on the top bunk of the two beds. And I went to sleep, and it wasn't very long. I want to say 20 minutes, but it maybe was like 30 minutes. So we're in that, I think that's N2 range.
You said 20 to 30?
Yeah.
That would be most likely N2. Maybe the very beginning of N3.
Which is interesting because you said that you usually don't have like very vivid and emotionally charged dreams around this time.
It's possible, but they're less intense.
Which is weird because this is probably the most intense dream I've ever had. So looking,
but go ahead and
but because I've already talked about this on the show, so I'm gonna preface it with this because listeners that have been listening this whole time, they already know this story.
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of like gives me a little bit of validation almost to like this probably was something more because it doesn't fit the typical norm of when you should have these dreams. Now, certainly something you could argue something biologically abnormal could have occurred, sure. But just from this defying the template, that just kind of tells me this was probably something more.
Like, and as I said, like the timing for the stages is all different per person, per night too. It just depends on, what the brain is feeling that day. So, I mean, that too. But I think that's important to note that you weren't in REM sleep.
Yeah, there's no way you get there in like 20 minutes. I was not.
No.
I was tired, but I was not that because it's college. Because like you stay up late playing video games and all that. But at least at Liberty. But yeah, no. So I was laying there on my bed, and I was laying like on my back, and it was in the dream. Like I was in the room in the dream, which is weird because I like almost never have a dream, at least that I remember, where I'm just like sitting there, like in where I'm actually physically laying in the dream. Like almost all my other dreams, I'm off doing something else or walking around or going somewhere or at some other location. So it was really weird that I was literally dreaming I was in the actual room I was in at Liberty. But I'm there laying on my back, and there's like wind whipping through like the windows, and it's weird because like I'm pretty sure the window was closed. And it's like the window opened from the bottom generally, I think. So it's like there shouldn't have been like wind whipping through like the blinds and everything, but there was in the dream, vision. And I'm laying there, and there's this huge bright light outside that's like permeating it almost into the whole room.
Like outside the window.
Outside the window, like to the wall. So I'm in a top bunk. I have a sheet hung up on my left side. I'm laying on my back. On my right side, there's a wall. At my right foot, there is the top of the window with the blinds closed. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of the flavor. There's not a lot. Like I'm in a pretty confined like space here for sleeping.
Yeah.
And then the ceiling's like, I don't know, 3 feet from my face or something. But so I'm laying there, and this bright light, this wind whipping, and then I feel like this most like peaceful, fulfilling presence, like more peaceful, fulfilling than I've ever felt in my entire life. Like I've not felt that like before, and not to the intensity sense. But I'm laying there, and I'm just like, because at this point I was like struggling my faith. This is one of those times where I was like, I'm not sure if I'm a Christian. I really don't know what to believe. I had just kind of thrown everything out the window, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But I'm laying there, and I just like, I'm feeling this presence, and my mind is just like, this has to be God. Like there is nothing else I can think of like that this could be, because I've been searching and thinking, and I'm like, what else is there out there? And from the logical conclusions I had already deduced, I'm like, this has to be God. And so I just said I don't think I said it with my mouth, but I think I just like kind of said it internally. I'm like, God, is that you? And the second I asked it, I woke up. No bright light. No, the feeling was like gone. There's no wind whipping through the blinds, and I'm laying exactly where I was in the dream. And I'm just like, okay, what is this now? So it was a very unique experience, and like
it was like almost surreal.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and it's interesting too. So I'm gonna name drop here. So we've got Vicky Joy Anderson coming on for the next episode, and she's gonna talk about sleep paralysis demons, and I was actually like reading through like her criteria, and we'll probably go over this more in the next episode, so I'm not going to say too much here. But she was like listing these criteria for like sleep paralysis and encounters with sleep paralysis demons. And she listed that like you're laying on your back, that there's like usually a windy presence, that there's light in the room. Yeah, there's pressure on the chest, but that's like for the the bad side of it. So I didn't have that, but like there's like the things of the light, the wind, laying on your back. And then instead of feeling a dark presence and it being dark, I had the opposite. It was a light presence. It was a very good feeling.
Yeah. Like you felt calm, peace.
Yeah. It was like, man, like, from what like Christianity teaches, if this is a fraction of what heaven is like, it's 100% like worth it. So it was a really cool experience to have that. And I've like kind of vaguely, like, because I know what that feels like, I'm kind of able to just sit and think about what that felt like, and I can sort of still feel it around me from time to time. Like I can make like it's there, but it's like it's so tuned down with all the noise of everything in day-to-day life that people miss it. And I think, in my opinion, is that I think everybody can experience that. It's just that you don't even know where to start, and I wouldn't have known where to start if I didn't have that experience to contrast it against. But
right.
That's pretty much all I got.
I have like a quick example too, like kind of maybe not so much like a straightforward communication thing, because you're interpreting it as, you know, him speaking to you in that way.
Well, he didn't speak, which is interesting, but yes, he like
you know what I mean.
Awareness of the presence.
Yes, yeah. So I had almost a similar experience.
Really?
Not that.
Okay,
like,
I was about to say you haven't told me that.
No, you know what I'm about to say.
Okay.
Yeah. But so I was also like struggling with my faith as well. And I had asked God for a sign. And so I was dreaming, that actually you and I, were expecting 2 twin boys and that I was giving birth to them. So when we realized that we were having 2 boys, we decided to name them Jack and then Samson. So in the dream, I remember like being so like adamant to name them Jack and Samson. So when I woke up, I was so confused about the names because I remembered that. I remembered the names. And, you know, I'll get into this a little bit more when I talk more about sleep in general and dreams. But normally when people wake up, they have very spotty memories about their dreams. But I remember this so vividly that I was so adamant to name them that. I didn't want to name them anything else. So when I woke up, I looked up the meanings of the name. So Samson could mean sun and shield, and then Jack means God is gracious, which I had no idea of those meanings before I went to bed. It depends on how you interpret that. Am I ever going to have 2 twin boys? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have twins right now. Let me clarify that. We have one beautiful daughter. I love her very much. And I was up until almost 2 a.m. with her last night because she just decided she didn't want to sleep.
And she never does that. But
yeah. Normally she's really good. But yeah, I was just like, I'm like laying down on the couch in her room, and I was like kind of drifting like in and out of like that like phase 1 of sleep, that N1. And I just like, I'm like looking over, and she was standing in her pack and play like the entire like hour and a half. She looked like a
mini sleep demon.
And so I just kind of see this like
silhouette.
This very like light like kind of silhouette like standing in this playpen. I'm like, yeah, this isn't creepy at all. I'm like, I love her, but like, man, this is
she
creepy.
She looks like a silhouette of a Chucky doll or something.
She's gonna be so mad when she's like 8 or 10 and she goes to listen to these podcast episodes. She's gonna be like, you just told everybody about me.
Hey, we're her parents. It's our job to make fun of her sometimes.
That is true.
But anyways, it depends on how you interpret this. Like, in a very literal sense, like, am I ever gonna have 2 twin boys and name them Jack and Samson? Probably not. Like, you know, you never know. But I do think that he spoke to me with the names. To tell me that, you know, he's the sun and shield. He's going to protect me, and that he's gracious. So.
Should I hit my other dream here too while we're doing all this? Or does that derail your whole...
No, it's not going to derail me.
Okay.
You're fine.
This one's more of a nerdy one, but this is, again, we've told all these, I believe it was episode 20, at least I've told mine, you haven't told yours, on episode 22.
Yeah.
So if you want to just kind of hear more of like the raw thoughts there, you can go listen to that. But we're trying to tie it into all of this here to figure out dreams a little bit more. But I had, I was really big in, I've always been big in airplanes since I was legit like 3 years old. And this was back when World of Warplanes was like in beta testing, and I submitted a request to like do the beta testing, and I've been waiting to hear something back for like some days. And then I went to bed and I had a dream, and in the dream I went downstairs to my computer and saw in my email notification that I'd been accepted to do beta testing for World of Warplanes. And then I woke up, and then sure enough, I go downstairs, pull up my computer, and the email's sitting right there, just like it was in the dream. And it's stuff like that. It's like it's weird, you know.
But you know what an argument would be. You know what manifesting is.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, you can argue manifesting. Maybe. What are your thoughts on that specifically?
Oh, I think it's like demonic.
I mean, like in relation to what I'm saying, though, because I don't think there was anything demonic about that. It was just...
No, I mean, there's a whole thing about the more you want something to happen and you think about it and everything, then it becomes a reality. So people could argue that. I'm just saying that there might be some people that's going to spin it that way.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think...
Yeah.
I would disagree that it's necessarily demonic in and of itself, because I think there is an aspect that even Christianity teaches faith, and that you see Jesus heal people according to their faith. And so I think belief and confidence in claiming something to happen to you is not necessarily bad, but it depends. I think that, and again, this is from a Christian worldview, but I think it depends the direction you take it and how you use it. That's when I was,
yeah.
So
there's a specific way to do things.
Right.
But yeah, I don't want to preach, so I'm not going to.
Yeah. I have another thought, because I was actually corresponding with Cordell on some stuff relating to dreams. So I'm going to hit some of I don't remember it very well, so forgive me, Cordell, if I don't get it right, because I know you will listen to this. But I'm going to do the best I can to rehash some of your points from our conversation a while back on dreams after this break, and we'll talk about that a little bit on the show here, because I think that's appropriately timed. So stay tuned, and we will be right back. Have bias in your memory of dreams here on Musings and Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix, because that's the direction we are just about to be going here. So this comes from talking with Cordell about dreams and like remembering dreams. And to my recollection, he had kind of posited the idea, how do you like know you're not like you're kind of having a bias almost in the dreams that you're remembering, like that you see, like you have the dream of something prophetic, it happens, but how many other dreams do you have about things that are like prophetic in a sense, but that don't happen? And so him and I were talking about this for a while, and I thought that this was an interesting angle, because then it's like, okay, how do you quantify?
Well, it questions the validity of it being prophetic to begin with.
Right, of course. And so I wanted to posit this, because it's a good Socratic method counter to this idea of having prophetic dreams, but I don't think it quite holds with this here. And feel free to challenge Cordell. We can go down a rabbit hole in a listener episode down there. I expect a challenge. But
it's Cordell. There's probably going to be one.
Oh, I'm sure. Love you, Cordell. All right. But I think it's like, so like take my dream about the World of Warplanes, right? Like it happened the night before. And I remembered it the day of. I didn't remember it before looking at the email. I remembered it, like, I remembered it before looking at the email. I didn't remember it when I looked at the email. Like, when I went, like, because, like, I had the dream in my mind as I was, like, going downstairs. Because I'm like, I wonder if this is going to be true. And then it happened. It wasn't like I had the dream, forgot about it, opened up my computer, saw it, and then suddenly remembered the dream.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So,
I gotcha. Because as more time passes, there's more of a chance that you forget details or you add details.
Right. And so I think that...
So that's more of the chance for the bias.
Right. And so, like, and I think that's what deja vu is that I think there is, and we're kind of jumping the gun here a little bit, or at least I am, but I think that there's a variety of dreams that you have. I don't think every single dream you have necessarily has like the deep analysis meaning that Freud might posit on it. I don't think every dream you have is going to be prophetic. I think there is a mix. That some of it is the subconscious, some of it is prophetic, and some of it is you just kind of guessing at the future, and some of it might be something very, very different. So there's a lot of different angles that we can take here, and I think we have to be careful not to put it into any one box too quickly. Do you have something you want to add?
No, I think it's funny what you said about deja vu, because predicting something that doesn't happen, there's actually a theory about dreams, and that being one of them. But I am getting ahead of myself now.
Yeah, I think there is some room for deja vu, like that you have dreams that predict stuff because your mind plays out scenarios, and that you then kind of experience that where you've forgotten the dream, but then you're like, oh wait, this is familiar. I've been here before. I've done this before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where you're like, this is familiar. I've been here. I've done this before. Where it's like, you know, this is familiar. Okay, I'll stop. You're not laughing. I was going for a deja. Anyway, never mind. Someone out there will laugh.
Sorry, I was looking at my notes and like making sure that I was.
Yeah, you're good. I got a subscriber off of that joke, and I'm gonna believe that one until I'm gonna believe that one until the end of the time. Anyway, but yeah, I think that there's also, because it's not like I had that dream other times, I think, you know, like to be able to have deja vu for it. It was just that I'd had it that night before, remembered it the second I woke up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something too, is I think your mind kind of recognizes subconsciously the different dreams that you have and puts emphasis on the dreams that are not normal. And so like the dreams of like World of Warplanes going down, my mind put emphasis on it because I think it said something like, you know, like subconsciously, it was like, hey, this is not normal. So we're going to
it's not a normal opportunity or something that happens
it's not
day to day.
Yeah, this is not a normal dream, so we're going to put emphasis on it. And then, so it was like, you know, we have these dreams day to day that are deja vu and predictive analysis, I think, certainly. But I think there's also those dreams with deeper meaning that some people are just able to identify. So I'll add that to the conversation here, Cordell, for you, because I know you'll have some thoughts on this, but feel free to hit me up with your counters, and if it warrants hashing out on the show, we'll hash it out on the show. But yeah, that was pretty much all I got, but I did want to mention his perspective on that a little bit. And so I would lean away from it and disagree with it. You know, just kind of looking at my experience with dreams, I think there may be some bias at certain points where you kind of you kind of remember dreams. So I don't think he's flat out wrong, but I think that I think dreams are too complex of a topic that we just can't put it into one category.
I would agree with that. They're so complex, but I would also agree that there could be bias, because I feel like there's bias with anything.
Yeah.
Anything and everything in the world. Mm-hmm. There's a possibility for bias. So I'm not going to discount that. I think that that's very much a possibility. Yeah. I think that the more time that passes between the dream and when it happens is more of a chance for bias.
I agree. Because then you don't even remember all the details properly when it's, you know, if you don't remember it right when you wake up and then you kind of recall it later, it's like, okay, well, how many of the details are you remembering? Versus if you remember it the second you wake up, you're remembering much more detail. This
is exactly why, say a crime happens and there's multiple witnesses, you keep the witnesses separate to get their actual stories, and they're not going to be influenced by the other witnesses.
Right.
That's the same exact reason.
Yeah. Well, that's all I had, so we can shift over to whatever you've got next.
That kind of relates.
Oh, sweet. Okay, good.
Kind of the deja vu part, but...
Oh, is that the next deja vu?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but slightly. But I was going to get into some theories about why we dream. So this is the moment where we talk about good old Freud.
Yay. Man, there was a meme I saw and I sent it to you, and it was like a meme of like Freud standing there, and he's like, is it normal? I'm going to use some slang term here, so pardon the vulgarity here.
Yeah.
But it was like, is it normal for me to want to bang my mom? That's what the Freud character is saying. And he's like, and it shows him kind of thinking for a second. And he's like, yes, it's normal. Everyone must have this because I have it.
The oedipus?
Yeah, the Oedipus complex. And that comes from Greek mythology, actually, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny. Or
He's also the one, I'll get into this too, but he's also the one that tried creating dream analysis and identifying symbolism with phallic structures. So
penises. Penis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like pencils and stuff would symbolize that. And then like, I think like doors or something would symbolize, the female counterpart.
Right. But yeah, no, he had a very hypersexual approach. I feel like that speaks more. I feel like that speaks more to Freud's mentality than anybody else's on like what was on his mind.
The Freudian slip.
Yeah. Yeah, he committed the ultimate Freudian slip with his theory, and no one realized it until now in 2025. But no, but you know why that is, right? Like why he had such a hyper like sexual focus in his theories.
You can go ahead.
It's because the Victorian era, they were just coming out of like that, and no joke, they would cover the legs of chairs in the Victorian era to, quote, keep men from lusting, quote, because the legs of the chairs might look too close to the legs of women and they didn't want to make men sin. And so it was such a hyper paranoid era about sexuality. Yeah. And Freud came out of this. And so he kind of went to the other extreme where it's like everybody had repressed sexuality because of this like
because of the over modest.
Yeah, the overly modest approach of society to literally cover like legs of a chair. Like I don't know, man. That's just that blows my mind.
That's very odd.
Yeah, but
it doesn't surprise me.
Right. And so it like he's very over sexually focused.
Yes.
But it makes sense as to why, because it was more prevalent in his day than it is now.
It does.
Because of the repression. And then when you repress, it goes into dreams. So there is a little validity to his dream analysis having a sexual component, but I think that especially nowadays, it's way blown out of proportion. But anyway, that was me on my psychology soapbox, but you're working on the masters.
But you use the right terminology and everything, the repress, because, he believed that dreams represented unconscious desires or thoughts or beliefs, motivations that we consciously repress. So you were spot on. He believed that, every dream represents the fulfillment of a wish. So he even thought that about nightmares, but for nightmares, it was more in like distorted or disguised forms.
I wonder too if that plays into like I think it's the Jungian theory of the shadow and all of that, like the dark side of you that wants the opposite of what you want, like there's a name for it, like when you stand on the edge of a cliff and you have that urge to jump, even though like you're not suicidal. Give me a second.
Yeah, you're gonna have to Google that one. I didn't look into that.
It's like Call of the Void, but it's in French. I think is what it is.
Well, I don't speak French, so.
Yeah, no, it's just Call of the Void. But yeah, it's a psychological phenomenon. This is AI overview from Google, by the way. Individuals experience an unsettling urge to jump from high places even when they have no intention of harming themselves. Yeah, it's Call of the Void.
Yeah,
but
and that's actually really normal too.
Right, but
like for everybody.
This is like the Jungian theory. I believe it's Jung. It's either Jung or Freud. They're tied together.
They are. They're very similar but different.
But it's like that shadow aspect, like that dark side of you, where it's like the id and ego and all of that. It's like that most subconscious dark side of you, supposedly. And it's like I wonder like how much of it plays into like things like that, right?
I don't know much about that one.
I don't know, but I just like talking about repression and everything like that. Like you're talking about like nightmares and like how like I wonder. I'm thinking because I'm not very familiar with Freud's work. I don't like studying Freud.
I don't either.
But I wonder how much of like the dream analysis and nightmares being things that you want. Maybe even it's not even so much what you want, but it's what that shadow or like dark side of you wants. Kind of like that Call of the Void. That's what I'm saying.
That's actually a good point.
So it's like it may not be what you want, but it's what that dark side of you wants that like that Freud and Jung teach in their theories.
Reminds me of the video, but the parasites in me want this.
Oh my god.
You don't know what I'm talking about.
No, is that Markiplier?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Sounds like something Markiplier would say.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him, but no, he didn't say that.
I thought you were going to go a very different direction. I thought you were going to go to the Void and Thunderbolts. That's another good one. That's another good one. That's a good illustration.
Don't do spoilers, but
it's been like 2 weeks. If they haven't gone and seen it at this point, that's their own fault.
You don't know that.
That's their own fault. But yeah, no, Thunderbolts is another good, the Marvel movie that just came out in 2025, for those of you that are listening, in the far quantum future, had a good illustration of the dark aspect.
Just mental health in general.
Yeah.
I think they did a really great job with multiple characters.
But specifically the Void, I think, was a good depiction of this really dark side of you that exists and that can exist. And I think that maybe a mild version of that would be a good embodiment of like what Freud and Jung believed about human psychology. Now, I'm not saying I believe all of this. I'm just connecting like what Freud's theory is.
You're making suggestions.
Yeah, I'm just trying to explain what I think Freud's theory is and building off of that a bit. But back over to you.
But the last thing about Freud was creating psychoanalysis. So he used dream interpretation with the phallic symbols and all of that to uncover unconscious material by using free association and identifying symbols. So identifying symbols, we already talked about that, but then free association is, the client says whatever's on their mind and then he just tries to make sense of it. There's another like really bad ethical problem with that, is that it relies solely on the psychologist's point of view.
Yeah.
So it's very biased. That's why I don't really like Freud as much.
Yeah. Anything else, or is this a good time to take a break?
That's fine. Then we'll come back and talk about like 2 more theories and then do your little spiel.
All right. Sounds good. Well, stay tuned. Don't let the delta
void.
Waves. you went dark. Okay. Don't let the delta waves take over. We will return in just a moment. Don't drift off into the void. Here on Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. I timed that nearly perfectly. I knew
was awesome.
I knew that beat drop was coming. I was trying to time it, and I was like just a hair off. But
I loved it.
I'll take it.
That was good.
Bask in the music for a moment as it fades into oblivion, and hear the call of light. I know my soundtracks. Anyway, back over to you to talk about other psychology theories.
All right. So the next one is Jung. So I believe he was actually a student of Freud, and then he turned rival. Don't you just hate that?
Yeah, he kind of went. He kind of built off of Freud's work and went to the next level. He actually laid the groundwork for the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
All the functions came from him.
But so he viewed dreams as more forward-thinking guides to restore psychological balance. So he wasn't really believing that dreams are like unconscious motivation or desires or whatever, but he was more saying that dreams are basically telling you who you want to be.
Okay. Interesting.
Because he saw them as more symbolic, drawing from a universal collective unconscious where like the archetypes, which are the universal inherited pattern of thought and behavior and then shared human experiences live. So do you know about Jung's archetypes, right? Or
it's been like 8 years, but yeah, it's been a while. Are you just talking about the functions? Or are you talking about like the actual archetypes?
The actual
Yeah,
archetypes.
that I don't remember off the top of my head. Sorry.
I'm not as educated on that one.
I have books on it behind you, but I don't know which book and where exactly in that huge
Those
stack.
50 books.
Actually, hang on a second.
Oh my gosh.
I can see it.
You see
My true type. No, this is MBTI. Never mind.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
I tried.
yeah. But major archetypes: persona, shadow, anima, animus, and then self.
Yeah, the shadow. That's
those.
kind of what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, I just forgot. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's the other archetypes that are like the hero, trickster, mother. Those.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
That your dreams are telling you like who you want to be under that.
Okay.
Like
Interesting.
archetypes. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had for Jung, but if you want to add.
No, I got nothing to add. We already kind of talked about Jung and Freud a bit, so I don't want to beat the dead horse here or
yeah.
I can't make a joke on that or it's going to get too sexual involving Freud, so we're just going to move on.
Either that or animal abuse.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Anywho, next theory. What do we got?
So the next one that I actually came across was, it's more modern, but the activation synthesis theory. So this one takes a very more scientific approach. It suggests that dreams are the brain's way of making sense of random signals during REM sleep. So it's just a byproduct of REM. That's all it's saying. So essentially the brain tries to create a story from the chaotic bursts of neural activity. A more recent version of this model was made called the AIM model, standing for activation, input, output, gating, and then modulation. And then this model offers like a more neurochemical and dimensional view of dreaming. So it looks at the brain state changes over time, not just the interpretation of the dream itself. It looks at the brain state.
Yeah, this is very much standard model. It's pretty much very materialistic and clinical, which, I mean, I'm not surprised, and I'm sure that there's elements that play into this. But
I like my science, so I like that. I like the activation synthesis theory, but I also like aspects of subconscious, like you want something to happen or, you know, your mind is trying to tell you something while you're sleeping, that sort of thing. What do you think?
Say that again. I'm sorry. I was pressing stuff that Cordell sent me.
I said I like the activation synthesis theory or the AIM model, but I also like the idea of the not so much like clinical aspect of it, like the brain states, like because I like the interpretive part of it too, to a degree.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rely solely on one or the other because I don't think that's correct.
I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to quantify dreams and in psychology and consciousness and all of that through solely materialistic lenses, because that's really all we have. But I think that we also have to be careful to not mix, not to forget that the spiritual could exist and that we could have means now to measure what the ancients would have called the spiritual, and we just don't realize it. And the spiritual might be its own form of materialistic.
Yeah.
Like we talk about with the fourth dimension. So I agree. I think it's good to approach it and to have some, okay, this is what we know. Here's our theory, because it's what we can ground in testable, observable, repeatable, and predictable science.
Yeah.
That is important. I repeat that all the time, but it's very important to actually have stuff we can do scientific experiments on and firsthand observe. So
again, they have to be falsifiable.
Yeah, and I can 100% get on board with, you know, that approach, but I think that there's probably more to it that we just don't have the methodology to theorize on, or maybe not to theorize on, but to at least test and to falsify. But just because we don't have the ability to test and falsify yet doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It just means that, you know, I think we should keep our minds open and realize we have limited knowledge.
It's just a question to solve. That's all it is.
So, but no, I agree.
But those are the only models that I have. I've also seen in passing suggestions about, you know, the brain processing information that you saw that day.
Yeah. I've seen that too.
I don't have a source for it, but I remember reading about it in my bachelor's program about when you sleep, there's like all sorts of processes that go on. well, this isn't really related to dreaming, but like when you sleep, the B alkaloids in your brain flush out. So that's why sleep is so important, because if you don't sleep, you have a higher chance of Alzheimer's. So that's why. But that's just to say there's so much that happens when you sleep, both biological processes and then, the psychological aspect of it.
Yeah, and we're going to dive into this as a whole in a little bit here, but Steven said something on the last episode. Trying to find it here.
Related to
what you're
dreams?
what we're talking about here and on the last episode for Psych and Spirit. So it's within the similar context.
Okay.
Something I've found that helps my understanding of the universe is the alchemical 3-part worldview. Alchemists believe that things happen in 3 realms at once: the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. So I think that that's an interesting idea to keep in mind too, that just because we can quantify something solely through materialistic means doesn't mean that there isn't more to it going on that we're not yet able to quantify.
I would agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but I think that's
a good point.
That states what we're kind of beating around the bush here, trying to say very eloquently. So
yeah.
Points to you, Stephen. Good job. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
What else you got? You got anything else, or should
that was all I had on my theories. So I'm going to kick it to you to give your little spiel, and then I'll take it back to my 2 other things, and then I'll be done.
Okay, sounds good. I'll hit dreams and mythology, and then I'll kick it over to you, and then we're going to do some closeouts, listener communication stuff, things like that.
All right, for it.
But yeah, so let's talk about dreams in mythology, and we won't have too long before we had a break here. But yeah, I was sitting and thinking, and it's like, I actually kind of had almost forgotten how much dreams play roles in different stories. And even stories we just gone over on the show, until I was actually sitting and thinking about it. Because I was like, yeah, in Gilgamesh, they have Gilgamesh sits down and they have dreams before fighting Humbaba. But then I'm like, wait a second. So I was looking, trying to dig into that a little bit. I'm like, wait a second. There's also dreams when before Gilgamesh meets Enkidu. Gilgamesh dreams, has a series of dreams, one, an axe falls to the ground that he can't lift or something like that. And then there's a star that falls down that he can't lift. And he goes to his mother to interpret it. And she says that this means that the gods are going to bring you someone that's your equal, and it's going to be your partner in life kind of a thing, and someone that you go and do great adventures with, more or less. I'm not looking exactly at it right now. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. But it's interesting because I was noticing, so you have he has dreams on his own when he's just supposedly sleeping, because that's really all we're told, about meeting Enkidu. And then he goes, when they're going out to fight Humbaba, he repeatedly goes on top of this hill. He builds a dream house, draws a circle around it, digs a well. And so it's they're doing some kind of enchantment or occult practice to summon having dreams or visions. And then he goes to sleep, and then he has dreams that are going to happen. And he's very anxious about it. And it sounds really weird. And then he tells Enkidu, and then Enkidu interprets each dream for him.
So you're saying that he was trying to bring on the dreams? Or?
Yes, he was trying to, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, at least the standard version, he's trying to bring on the dreams by building a dream house, specifically sitting in the doorway, it specifically says drawing a circle around. So I'm not too into what the Mesopotamian occult practices exactly would be on that, but it seems very occultic.
It does.
So it's interesting, but it's showing different ways that these dreams occur too, which is interesting. And then we go over to Etana, and let's see if I can actually find it here. I'm going to read an excerpt from Stephanie Dawley's Myths of Mesopotamia, where Etana has a dream and then tells the eagle. Etana opened his mouth and spoke to the eagle. My friend, the god, showed me another dream. We were going through the entrance of the gate of Anu and Enlil and Ea. We bowed down together, you and I. We were going through the entrance of the gate of Sin, Shamash, Adad, and Ishtar. We bowed down together, you and I. I saw a house with a window that was not sealed. I pushed it open and went inside. Sitting in there was a girl adorned with a crown, fair of face. A throne was set in place, and beneath the throne crouched snarling lions. I came up, and the lions sprang at me. I woke up terrified. And then the eagle just says, oh, the dream's quite clear. Let's go up to the heavens. It's that's kind of concerning. But what we're led to believe is that Etana ascends and attains the plant of birth to be able to produce an heir, Bali. That's kind of what we're led to believe, more or less. But this is, I'd be kind of concerned if I had this dream and lions like jump out at me and like wake up. I'd be like, maybe we shouldn't go. But it's interesting because we see this kind of same motif echoed in like Gilgamesh, where like I think like a mountain collapses on him in one of his dreams, because the version I was reading was pretty fragmented. But there's like a lot of different like things that I'm just like, I'm reading it and I'm like, these don't sound like good things, but they're getting interpreted as good things. I'm like, this is kind of weird. And then we even have this going on in the Bible with Joseph. He's a huge character for this, where he would have dreams and be able to interpret his own dreams, and he would be able to interpret other people's dreams.
Well, yeah, I mean, he had the grain bowing down, and then he had the sun, moon, and stars bowing down.
Yeah, and he interpreted that as like, you know, his whole family is going to bow down to him in terms of his authority.
Yeah.
And then that got him sent to Egypt, where he ended up interpreting dreams for the Pharaoh and helping them prepare for famine. And so it's weird because you have like all of these different like approaches on dreams, and sometimes the dreamer can interpret it and sometimes the dreamer can't interpret it.
Right.
And you see that with Gilgamesh and Etana, that they both can't interpret it, but they have dreams and they go to someone. Versus, you know, Joseph, he has dreams and he's able to interpret it. And then he also interprets dreams for others. So you've got to wonder then if like Enkidu had his own dreams that he was then able to interpret, or if he just didn't have dreams, because he's not the one that has any of the dreams in the Epic of Gilgamesh for that. So I don't know. It's a very interesting approach, but it showed that the ancients thought there was meaning to be gleaned within dreams. And I think that we should be cautious to get overly clinical and flat out dismiss the idea that dreams just don't carry any weight. I mean, between like me literally having a prophetic dream, between all of the ancients like focus around it and focusing around, you know, in dream analysis and interpretation and everything. I don't know. It's just, but then you also got to wonder, like with Cordell's question, like how much does bias play into this? Because a lot of these things sound really scary. And so the eagle says, "Come, my friend, it's quite clear. Let's ascend to the heavens." It's like,
it almost sounds like confirmation bias.
It's like, yeah, you ascend to the heavens, you go in there.
Like no matter what was going to happen, he was going to say that anyways.
Yeah. Or could it be saying that Etana has to stay in the heavens, and that's the meaning of it, is that he's going to be pounced upon and not allowed to return? And that was the consequence for getting the plant of birth and for Bali to then succeed Etana.
We're asking the real questions here now.
Yeah, which, by the way, I did go and dig into the Sumerian king list in the original Sumerian a little bit. He is followed by Bali. Bali is one of the, I thought it was everybody when I had initially done this episode, but it's not everybody. There's very few people where it identifies like a son, and Bali is identified as a son to Etana in the Sumerian king list, at least the one that I've been referencing. I think it's CDLI, like a compilation of a bunch of different editions. So that's worth noting that Etana did most likely succeed in his quest, at least according to the Sumerian king list. But I think this adds a really interesting dimension as to how we consider dreams. And yes, there might be confirmation bias that exists in there to interpret dreams a certain way. And, you know, because Etana has this dream right after they fail at getting to the heavens. So they try to go up, he gets too scared, they come back down. And then he has this dream of them succeeding in the quest. And it's like, how much of this is his regret playing into this?
Or how much of his desire to succeed.
Right. But then also, why didn't he have dreams about the failure? Like because that's on the forefront of his mind. If
you were processing information.
Yeah. And so, yes, there's more nuance and complexity that can go into it, but it's like, how exactly do you choose to quantify it? And I think there's room to argue that confirmation bias, but I think that we should be careful to apply a broad rule too broadly and too definitively to these topics. So something to think about. Email us with your thoughts, m.quad.musings@gmail.com if you have other things to add to it. Otherwise, we will be back in a moment. Whoops. We're back.
I was like, did you seriously stop like recording the thing? I was like,
That's fine. No mistakes here. It's all right.
no regrets.
No regrets. I'm not going to edit that out. That's funny.
Yeah,
that
we're
works.
human.
Yeah, it happens. Anywho, you have some stuff about sleep paralysis to talk about, yeah?
Lucid dreaming first.
Oh, lucid dreaming. Okay.
Yeah, I was always fascinated by lucid dreaming when I was younger, because I didn't realize that it was possible. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about that, and then get into sleep paralysis, and then that's it for me.
All right.
So lucid dreaming is a pretty unique state. So that's where a person becomes aware that they are dreaming and can sometimes even control the content of the dream.
Right.
So it usually occurs before REM, but the brain activity during lucid dreaming almost resembles the wakefulness state with the alpha and beta.
Interesting.
So there's been some studies that show increased brain activation, especially in the frontal regions, but some of the earlier research on gamma activity specifically is flawed, I would say, because the eye movements were affecting the EEG recordings.
Oh, okay.
And that's not the actual brain activity, that's just eye movement. So they couldn't pinpoint that, and they chalked it up to be that. So
okay. Talking about bias.
Yeah.
Whoops.
And lucid dreaming is also kind of rare, so it's hard to get enough sample sizes to actually quantify it and study it. But other studies have found lower delta waves, so that just means that the brain is more awake. So they did confirm that. So it's promising, but there needs to be clearer and more careful research in the future. But I thought that was interesting that you mentioned the occult and everything, because I do think that there's a possibility for lucid dreaming to be part of the occult as well. Or in a sense of opening yourself up to something demonic, potentially.
Yeah, and we're going to have a guest on that's actually going to talk about like astral projection as well.
Yeah.
Like in the near future. I think he actually has experiences with this and with the occult, so it'll provide a really unique perspective on this. So we'll go down that rabbit hole a little bit more in the future and talk about it. But yeah.
I just wanted to make it clear, I don't condone lucid dreaming. If you're doing it on purpose, I don't condone it, but to each their own.
Yeah. You're free to do as you want. That's just your personal recommendation.
Yeah.
Is that it could, in theory, be dangerous. I get that.
Yeah. It could open up spiritual stuff relating to the fourth dimension, but yeah.
Yeah, whether that's good or not is the question.
Yeah. So
but no, that fits, because I know I think it was Tesla that was like would try to lucid dream, and he would like hold a ball in his hand, and then like as he was falling asleep, he'd drop the ball, and that would kind of like wake him up enough like right before going into sleep to like control the dreams and be able to intentionally lucid dream. So it is that fits.
It's possible
with what you're saying in terms of the cycle. So that's cool.
Yeah. But I guess going into sleep paralysis now.
Sure.
But sleep paralysis is the temporary inability to move or speak while falling asleep or waking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's closely tied to REM sleep, where the brain is active but the body is paralyzed, called atonia. However, you have cognitive awareness.
Right, and some people it's just paralysis, and some people report seeing entities.
Yeah.
During this state.
Yeah. So because your brain is still in a dreamlike REM state, hallucinations can occur. So visual, auditory.
But the question is, are they really hallucinations?
Babe. Did you read my notes?
No. Sorry, was that your...
Yes.
That was your ending line. I'm sorry.
Way to steal my thunder. I was going to have a big mic drop. Man. All right.
You can't drop the mic. They're on stands.
All right.
Sorry, dear.
It's fine. So are sleep paralysis hallucinations just hallucinations, or is it a connection to the spiritual dimension that we just can't see?
Yeah. Sorry.
That was it.
I've been reading Vicky's book, and so I was kind of like listening to what you're saying. I'm like, oh, I think I know where to go with this. And so apparently I read your mind a little too well.
Bananas.
Speaking of that, actually, no, that was legit the perfect segue because I got an email from Cordell about that specific topic that I was going to read. So
about what specifically?
About bananas. The
bananas?
Story. Yeah, because he listened to that episode. I legit have an email queued up to talk about that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So Cordell sent in this email. He said, my go-to random thing that he thinks of when you say think of something random is tacos. Sometimes I'll think too long and change to pineapples. The fact that Josiah was able to guess what Maddie was thinking on the first date was absolutely space, bananas.
Bananas. Nice.
Yeah, so that was legit the perfect segue for that. Thank you, because I had that sitting in my notes here.
You're welcome.
But yeah. Got a couple other things that we will dive into.
But that, just to be clear, that's it for me.
Okay,
that's
cool.
all I had.
Yeah, you're not paralyzed here, are you?
No, I'm not.
All right, so yeah, just some kind of listener communications and stuff that we're going to shift into here, and just kind of some other vague thoughts that I had. I'd seen something interesting on social media. It was a post someone did, and I'm just going to read it. The name's like crossed out, so I can't cite this in any way, shape, or form. But someone commented, if you see an angel, this wasn't on any of our platforms. This was just something I came across in like random scrolling on social media. What do you mean
the name was crossed out? What do you mean?
Like it's scratched out because someone did a post and it's like a Reddit post, but the name is like scratched out.
Oh, they covered it.
Yeah, it's anonymous.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically just says, honestly, if you see an angel that's all eyes and wings and wheels of fire, you should be worried. Like not because it's going to hurt you or anything, but because scripturally angels invariably appear to ordinary people in human form. In general, they only show their inhuman true forms to prophets, which means that if you're seeing them like that, they come bearing responsibility. So I just thought that was an interesting insight. I don't know how true that is actually, because I've never thought about it from that angle, but I'm gonna have to look into that. Like,
yeah, I have no idea.
From a biblical angle, but like, yeah, generally the prophets report seeing angels in really freaky forms. Like even John sees Jesus in Revelation in a really weird form. Mm-hmm. But it's like, yeah, a lot of times like angels will appear just like people too. Sometimes like you see when the angels go into Sodom and Gomorrah, they appear like more or less people. There's something different, but they're people. Like they look like people anyway. So yeah. I thought that one was interesting.
I mean, it's a good point. I'm just not going to either disagree or agree because I don't know yet.
We'll talk about it as we continue our comparative mythology journeys. Yeah. But yeah, something else I had seen was that I've heard talked about how it's interesting that like you generally can't read in dreams, and you like usually can't like see, like your phones don't work in dreams. This is what I've seen. Like specifically, Brothers of the Serpent has talked about this a lot, which I think is it's kind of interesting. But I don't know. Do you have a theory as to why?
Not so much a theory, but there is a method to train yourself to lucid dream where if you look at a clock,
right,
in real life, like not the numerical like digital clock, but an actual clock, and you train yourself to check it like randomly in the day, and then when you go to sleep and you look at a clock in your dream, 9 times out of 10, like most likely, the clock is going to be deformed in some way. The hands are going to be missing. Numbers aren't going to be there. Something is going to be wrong with the clock. And that's how you know you're dreaming. So there's people that use that method. So I would believe that you don't have, an ability to read or anything in dreams.
Yeah, it's kind of like Inception.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah. That's where like, you have like your thing to ground you, and if the top's spinning or not, he kind of knows if it's a dream, and then it ends with the top still spinning. And so you don't know if he's actually like achieved his goals or if it's all just him living in a dream state to cope. Yeah. We're going to do one more longer listener communication, but I'm going to take a quick ad break here, and then we'll do that, and then we're going to do closeout. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we hope you haven't drifted off here on Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. Thank you for bearing with us. We are going to hit a little bit more listener communications here that I had from Stephen, just to kind of hit some other, stuff, some differing perspectives and catch up here. All right. There may be occasional pauses here, but
thank you for calling me Queen, Stephen.
Yeah, he played off of our joke from the last episode, Her Majesty the Queen, Miss Lady Madison, talking. He had some interesting thoughts to add in on the. I'm just going to read it, the thing here, what he had to say. But he said, you mentioned phantom limb syndrome, and he thought that was a wonderful example. When I was studying some aspects of psychology, something came up as the opposite of phantom limb syndrome called body integrity dysphoria. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not.
Yes.
Okay. This is where someone thinks a healthy part of their body doesn't belong to them and should be removed. One of the most interesting theories on the cause is that we have a map in our brain of our body. Yes, I agree with that, Stephen. And a person experiencing BID has an incomplete or damaged map. This could also explain phantom limb by saying the brain map is complete, but the body isn't. So the signals can get crossed one way or the other, resulting in the impression of control.
I have an example of that too.
Oh, go ahead.
A show.
Sweet, go ahead.
I'm gonna nix some details here because it's a little gory. So, with BID, there was a show that I watched from Grey's Anatomy. So,
oh, that's how you know about it. Okay.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
Grey's Anatomy is awesome sometimes for psychology as well as medical, like physical medical stuff. But, basically, there was one patient that came in and he was so convinced that his foot didn't belong to him, and it was so bad that they left him alone for like a couple of minutes and he ended up amputating it himself.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So I'm not going to get into it much there, but it is a very real thing. It happens. I don't know how rare or common it is. I would assume more rare. But it is a real thing. So that was a really good example that he mentioned, like the opposite of that. So,
yeah.
Awesome.
He had also hit on like materialistic theories and stuff, like that we had already talked about with the alchemical approach. Stephen, this would be a question I have for you. I'm assuming that you probably adhere to the as above, so below approach from more of the esoteric perspective with that. That would be my guess, but I'd be curious to hear a little more on that. And then he had some stuff to say on panpsychism because he adheres to this belief system. It wasn't so much of a correction, but more just that he adheres to it, but not quite the way that it was presented. So I wanted to throw this out to...
I will say the last episode, I didn't have much material on panpsychism.
Okay.
I'm just not as educated in it. So I know I was more brief with it than the other ones. So, yeah.
Yeah. So he had said he does believe conscious exists more as a field like radio waves, and that certain structures are formed to channel this consciousness, and that the human brain is more sophisticated of an antenna. And so we have the highest transmitted consciousness that we know of. Maybe insects have a less sophisticated antenna, so their consciousness may only be as sophisticated as instinct. Same with plants, and then even particles can demonstrate this in a phenomenon called self-organization, which I'm actually not familiar with that.
I've heard of it before. I
don't
know enough about it to explain it, but I have heard that term before.
Yeah, and I have a promised email from Stephen talking about abiogenesis as well a bit more. So I'm guessing self-organization is going to play into this and kind of like a deeper underlying consciousness beyond the universe propelling abiogenesis on because of the need to have consciousness expressed through the antenna of the material. This is me guessing. This wasn't his comment.
Okay.
But that's my guess at where you're kind of going with this, Stephen, which I'm stoked to hear that. Send me that email whenever you have the time to structure it out, especially while we're going through this series. That'd make a great addition, I think. But yeah, basically he says that's not to say any of the other theories don't apply or explain how the system works. He thinks that the microtubule theory fits well with what he believes, and he's going to be diving into that. So it's really cool. We're able to kind of he's kind of able to throw some stuff my way that I'm not as familiar with. We're able to throw stuff his way that he's not as familiar with. And this is how we kind of...
This is the whole point.
This is the point of Quad Squad.
Yes.
The M Quad movement is about people from differing perspectives, you know, wherever you fall, like whatever you believe, it's just, hey, let's all gather together and let's seek what is the truth in an objective and respectful format using the Socratic method and using logic. But man, do I have to filter out a lot of trolls on our social media platforms doing that.
Well, I think the biggest thing with trolls is you got to wonder why they're so adamant on being negative and approaching it with that attitude.
I talked about this with Fish Nerd early on in the series. It's because of brainwashing, legit. Like that, I legit think that's what it is because I have caught myself where I believe something is true and someone will say something that I disagree with, and I don't have a good rational counter to it, but I just feel an emotional counter where I'm like,
that's normal,
no, they're wrong. Right. But like,
it's normal to invoke emotion when somebody disagrees with you because you automatically, like, you want to be right. Everyone wants to be right.
Right. But it's more than that. It's more like they're just wrong. Like, it's not even, oh, I want to be right. It's no, this is incorrect. And I just have an emotional reaction. And I'm like, why? And I think about it rationally and I'm like, no, they're actually right. Why am I having this emotional reaction? I'm like, it's because maybe not so much brainwashing at least, but it's like, it's because I have a belief system that was challenged and that's uncomfortable. And so it's a normal psychological response. And I think a lot of people just don't take the time to develop and reflect into themselves enough to catch this. And so they just, honestly, it's like, I don't want to sound condescending, but honestly, to me, it kind of sounds depressing and like kind of like almost sad, but not like a sad way to live, but like reacting out of that emotional state of like, oh, someone said something's wrong and I'm just going to react to it. Like, you know, without actually even logically entertaining it and playing the Socratic method to say, hey, maybe do they have a point? Like that to me is just like, that's honestly, it's a little depressing. Like,
I will say, I think there's something to learn from everybody.
I agree.
Even if that's the way they are presenting themselves online and in your comments, I think there is something to learn from them. They just have to present it in a way that makes people want to receive their perception.
Patience. That's what I have to learn from a lot of the trolls.
Well, patience, but also just, again, the whole respect, but just openness.
Yeah.
Being open.
Yeah. And I'm willing to hear of differing perspectives. I mean, we have, you know, listeners from all over different belief systems here, you know, theistic Luciferian, we have agnostic, you know, we have Christian perspectives, and I'm not afraid of that. And there are Christians out there that would be afraid of that. Like I am about seeking the truth. And so it's like, hey, you know, despite having different beliefs, I think it's beautiful. We can sit together and have conversations about things as a group of people. And that is what MQuad is about.
Yep.
But yeah, speaking about the theistic Luciferian, Stephen, I saw you commented that. So from what I could see, that's kind of just basically the idea of that Satan is the good guy in the fall and that he was rebelling against an authoritarian God. And from what I could see, there's some differing perspectives on what exactly that could mean. So I would be curious to hear like where you lie on that spectrum, if there's a different take that you have on it. But I actually wanted to ask you a question as well, Stephen, about what your thoughts were on episode 43 then with Anzu and comparing Anzu to Lucifer then. Would you agree with that perspective? Would you disagree with that perspective? Would you have any thoughts or counters to add to it? Because he did say he's not one to get offended, so don't be afraid to make inquiries here. So I hope it's okay to do it on the show. If not, I'm sorry. I'll stick to emails or something from now on. But this was a comment on YouTube, so we
appreciate you not getting offended by questions.
Yes. It's never my intent to offend anyone's belief systems. So if I do come across that way, I do apologize. But I usually try to be pretty...
That's the whole point of the podcast, is to question and talk about it. So.
Yeah. And so if someone accidentally oversteps a little bit, there's a little bit of grace for that, I think, which is important. But yeah, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are on Anzu being Lucifer, because I know there's a lot of people that have very strong, adamant feelings that Enki is Lucifer in Mesopotamian mythology, kind of being a wisdom-like figure. And from what I've seen and read and researched, I would disagree with that, but that'll be a podcast episode in the future, I think. So I'm going to talk about Enlil and Enki both a bit more, because I've done some more research, and that's what's nice is you leading episodes and everything. I can focus. I've been working through some Sumerian, brushing up and building some more base of ancient Hebrew, working through the Book of Enoch again, and now having like Hebrew and a little bit of Akkadian and a bit of Sumerian insights.
Yeah.
I'm looking at things and spotting patterns I was not expecting to see, which is pretty interesting. But we'll have to get into that down the road. But some of the names of the angels in Enoch were, I was looking at them and I'm like, wait, I'm seeing things. not literal sleep paralysis demon things, but not having a vision, but just like metaphorically, like I'm making connections in the mythical matrix a little bit more. So Enoch is coming down the road. It'll probably be some months still because I got a lot of things slotted and I'm trying to get a lot of different guests on. But no, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on all of that, Stephen. No, I'm throwing a lot at you here. Sorry. But yeah, I saw you you mentioned about making mead as well. I'm at my first batch of getting honey from the bees this year, if all goes well. So I've actually thought about making mead at some point, like once I get to a solid honey production. So I'll keep you in mind once like I actually get to that point and reach out with some questions as to how to get started and the legalities of that too, because I know that making alcohol is kind of regulated in certain instances. So I don't know what the laws are for that, especially for state to state. But,
don't make moonshine.
Yeah, don't make moonshine.
You could end up blind.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. Those what was it? Those beta waves aren't going to work as well being in the back of the brain where the optical did I get it wrong? Is this not beta waves? Darn it. I was
in the back?
Yeah, in the back. It's beta, right? No, it's alpha.
Those are alpha.
Ah, dang it. I was trying to sound so smart. That's all right.
You were close.
I was close.
You were close.
Yeah.
You got it.
Most of my facts build around more mythology than psychology these days, but
I will say you remembered a lot of it very quickly. So it's okay to mix up some details. It's fine. I have to go back too and look like occasionally.
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got here. Do you have anything else that you're wanting to add?
Just in general or?
Yeah.
Like I think I'm okay actually. I'm pretty sure I covered a good portion of sleep and dreams. I know I could have gone into a lot more detail, but I really didn't feel like it. And I don't want to dump all sorts of information on.
Yeah. And
it's a lot.
It's a lot. And we have to hit some of that to have a good understanding of like the physiology and the material aspect. But we do also not want to overload our listeners. Cause I know like you were saying all of that and I'm just like, oh man, I have a little bit of understanding of this. And like the brain regions was definitely. And there's a lot of other stuff we can get into too with like Phineas Gage even and like the prefrontal cortex damage and then like losing impulse control and everything.
If anyone is interested, look up the case study with Phineas Gage. Was it like a tamping? What's it called? A pole.
For those of you that are afraid of those of you that are afraid of gore, stop listening.
I'm not going to say that.
Basically,
something happened where he should have.
Okay, I thought you were going to just say it. Okay.
No. Something bad really happened. Something gory really happened, and he should have lost functioning, but he didn't.
Yeah,
he just changed. His personality changed, but he did not lose function. The function changed.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to get into the gory of that.
Yeah. I guess I'll take a minute to talk about like where we're going to. So we got Psych and Spirit series that we're doing here. So we're gonna have a series of guests on, some with some experience in the occult from more of a Christian perspective. And so Stephen, you kind of looking at this from a different perspective. Feel free to weigh in counters, and if you have any good questions, send them in, and I can hit up people that are guests on the show. Would definitely love to get some good deep questions to ask to play the Socratic method or anything like that.
I also want to say I really appreciate the way Stephen is presenting himself and presenting his beliefs. It's very respectful, and I just really appreciate that. It's a very nice difference from the other people that you see online. So yeah, I appreciate it.
You usually don't see all the people I have to deal with on my social media.
I'm not really interested in looking at all the negative comments, but you show me a lot of good things, but you do show me the occasional person that makes some pretty wild claims. But
yeah, I get a lot of trolls on the shorts and reels, but it is what it is. It's part of the journey. It's worth it because I'll get those occasional comments where someone will comment like, "I found my people," or like, Josiah, I love your content. Like, it's worth it to me, where it's like to sift through the people that are reacting out of their toxicity and their immaturity to just attack someone ad hominem.
Yeah.
It's worth it to find those few to build a community for MQuad. That's worth it to me, to build a community of like-minded people that just want to seek the truth, regardless of whether you're agnostic, atheist, Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, theistic Luciferian, like whatever your perspective is. Like, building a community just around people that are like, hey, you know what? Like, we all believe different things and we can be respectful in that, but let's challenge each other in a healthy way and seek the truth together. And that to me is beautiful. But
yes,
back to where we're going. So
I apologize.
No, you're good.
I just wanted to
take
take a moment to say thank you. But.
Yeah. So we're going to have a guest on talking about sleep paralysis a bit. And then we're going to have a guest on talking about the occult from a Christian perspective. And then we have another guest on that's going to be talking about some things in similar fields. And then you're going to be doing some more psychology stuff for us, like about like drugs and other sleep disorders and things and how those can affect the brain. And then from there, we'll kind of tip our toes back into the mythology and stuff a little bit. So this is just kind of a 5 to 8 episode segue that we're doing here to go down kind of the spiritual and psychological rabbit hole a little bit.
Just to clarify, is my drug episode and my other sleep disorder episode, is that going to be after the guests or before?
Probably after. We'll sort that out.
That's fine.
After we're on air. Also, this is probably going to get a medal for being the longest episode or near the longest episode, because we're at an hour and 45. I think the longest is like an hour 46 or so. So we should just have like a minute of silence where we sit here just to get this as the longest
episode. To break the record.
Just to break the record. We haven't capped 2 hours yet on MQuad, but I like to keep it a little shorter so that the casual listener doesn't look at it and be like, 2 hours. And then they hear the first like 5 minutes talking about brain regions and they're just like, 2 hours of this, I'm out.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys.
It's all right.
And girls.
It's got to be done. This is more for our dedicated listeners. It's a part 2 in the series.
Apologize.
So, no, it's a part 2 in the series. Don't apologize. It's you got to build that base so that we can have stuff to reference to.
I did try to put it in the simplest terms, but I get it's a lot of, again, it's a ton of information all at once. Like it's a lot, but yeah. That's why I added the 3D brain link.
Yeah.
For anyone who's visual, to check it out. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, send us an email to m.quad.musings@gmail.com if you have any questions, concessions, contentions, snide remarks, whatever you like about the show, whatever you don't like about the show. Any other thoughts that you want to add to this conversation, questions that you have, we want to hear from you. As you see, we interact with the listeners that communicate with us, so don't be afraid to reach out. We ask that you take a minute to share the podcast with someone. If you're enjoying our content and you want to help us continue to make this content, share the podcast with someone. The more we build the listener base, the more content we're able to deliver for you. Buy us a cup of coffee link if you want to support the research through a monetary donation. You can go there and you can do any donation you please. No pressure. $25 donation or more will get you mentioned as a producer for the upcoming show. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube handles all m.quad.musings or Musings on Mysteries in the Mythical Matrix. Discord server link will be in the show notes. So whether you've been listening on the earth with the mortals, in the stars of heaven with Enoch and the cherubim, or
down in Sheol,
we thank you for quantumly transcending time to join us for this epic psychology journey. And we hope you have a good rest of your night.